The morning sunlight spilled lazily through the cracked blinds of Mr. Wilson's ninth-grade homeroom, casting long beams across rows of chipped desks and tired faces. Most students were still rubbing sleep from their eyes or poking at their phones under the tables. It was just another Wednesday in Westford High, a school that prided itself on spirit days and football championships, but not much else. Then the door opened. It didn't slam or creak. It just opened softly, quietly. But somehow every head turned. She stepped in like she wasn't new at all, like she wasn't nervous, wasn't trying to disappear. Her shoulders were straight, eyes calm, and she walked with the kind of quiet strength that made the room shift. Her skin was the color of smooth mahogany, her hair braided neatly down her back. She wore the standard uniform, jeans, hoodie, backpack, but something about the way she carried herself made her different. No one said anything, not yet, but whispers began in low waves. That the new girl? Yeah, she's from Atlanta or something. She looks serious. Bet? She's one of those honor roll types. Mr. Wilson cleared his throat and motioned her to the front. Class, this is Nyla James. She'll be joining us starting today. Let's make her feel welcome. A few lazy claps followed, more out of habit than warmth. Nyla didn't react. She just gave a slight nod and took the empty seat by the window, ironically. The one most kids avoided because it was right next to the heater that always groaned during tests. But she didn't seem to mind. What no one knew, what absolutely no one could have guessed, was that Nyla wasn't just another transfer student. She wasn't someone you could push around. She wasn't here to win popularity contests. She wasn't here to be invisible either. Because Nyla James was a black belt in karate. Not just any black belt either. She'd trained since she was 6 under her grandfather, a retired Marine and dojo master who believed discipline wasn't something you wore. It was something you breathed. Nyla had competed across the country, broken boards, trophies, gold medals, all that. But none of that came with her to Westford. She didn't post about it online, didn't brag, didn't bring the past with her. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a new chapter. Just peace and quiet. But peace wasn't something Westford High was known for. Especially not for the new black girl. Especially not when Chloe and her crew ran the halls like their personal runway. Chloe Cartwright, captain of the cheer squad, daughter of the town councilman, blonde, sharp-tongued, always surrounded by the same 3 girls who laughed when she laughed and rolled their eyes when she did. The moment Chloe spotted Nyla at lunch, it began. She didn't march over immediately. Bullies like Chloe knew how to pace themselves. It was like a sport. First came the stares, then the whispered jokes at the corner table, then the accidental bump in the hallway that almost knocked Nyla's tray over. But Nyla? She didn't flinch. She just picked up her milk carton, walked to her table, and sat down like nothing happened. That only made Chloe angrier. By Friday, the whispers had grown. Stories started spreading. She didn't even say hi when Chloe asked her where she's from. Did you see her notebook? Totally blank, probably not even smart. She's got this creepy stare like she's watching everything. It didn't help that Nyla barely spoke. She was polite to teachers, nodded when someone greeted her, but never tried to fit in, and that made her a target. So Chloe decided it was time to make a point. In gym class, where Coach Daniels left the girls to stretch while he sat in his office with a protein bar and his AirPods, Chloe cornered Nyla near the bleachers. "You think you're better than us?" she said, loud enough for the others to hear. Nyla looked up from tying her shoelaces. "No." "Oh, so you just think you're too good to talk to anyone?" Nyla stood up, calm. "I didn't say that either." "Then maybe you should learn your place. This isn't Atlanta. You don't run things here." One of Chloe's friends, Madison, smirked and added, "We don't need another charity case trying to act tough." Nyla's eyes didn't blink. She didn't move, but there was something sharp in the air now. Like tension before lightning, she spoke softly. "You should walk away." Chloe stepped closer, inches from her face. Or what? And just when it seemed like something was about to happen, Coach Daniels came back. "All right, girls, On the track. Let's move. The moment passed. But the fuse was lit. That night, Nyla didn't tell her mom what happened. She never liked making things bigger than they were. And besides, she knew how to handle herself. She'd been taught that strength wasn't about using your fists. It was knowing when not to, but Westford didn't know that. And it didn't care. The next week, it got worse. Someone scribbled, "Go back where you came from" on her locker in Sharpie. Someone else dumped ketchup on her seat in the cafeteria. And through it all, Nyla didn't react. Not once. But Coach Monroe, the assistant PE teacher, noticed. She saw the bruises Nyla tried to hide. The quick way she checked over her shoulder in the locker room, one afternoon after class, she called Nyla over. "You all right?" she asked. Nyla nodded. "Just tired." "You know," Coach said slowly, "some people think staying silent keeps the peace. But sometimes, silence just gives loud people more room." Nyla looked down. "I'm trying not to start anything." Coach paused, then leaned in. "Just make sure you're not letting them finish it either." It was the first time someone had said something real, something that stuck. But while Nyla was trying to stay calm, someone else, miles away, was making a decision that would change her life too. His name was Jamal Thomas. 17. Senior. Tall. Lanky. Quiet. The kind of kid who always gave up his seat on the bus without being asked, who held the door open even when people forgot to say thank you. That day, he was on his way home from a college visit, waiting in the crowded city terminal when a pregnant white woman stepped onto the train looking exhausted. People looked at her belly, then back at their phones. But Jamal stood up. "Ma'am, you can take my seat." She looked surprised, grateful. "Are you sure?" "Of course," he smiled. She sat, placed her hand on her belly, then pulled out a folded piece of paper from her purse. "I don't usually do this," she whispered. "But you need to read this. Later." Confused, Jamal took the note and slipped it into his backpack. He didn't read it until he got home. And when he did, everything changed. But back at Westford High, Chloe and her crew weren't done yet. They had one more trick up their sleeve. They didn't know about Jamal. They didn't know about the note. And they definitely didn't know that the girl they thought they could break was about to show them just how wrong they were. Because the next time they tried to corner Nyla, there wouldn't be a teacher walking in. There wouldn't be a hallway full of witnesses. It would just be them and her, and the strength she'd been holding back this whole time. But how that moment unfolded, you'll have to see for yourself. The hallway after sixth period was unusually quiet. Most students had already rushed out toward the front doors, or were huddled in corners laughing and scrolling through their phones. But near the back of the school, where the old gym lockers hadn't been updated in decades and the security cameras always blinked like they were tired, Nyla was alone, or so she thought. She'd just pulled her hoodie over her head and was adjusting her bag strap when the voices came around the corner. There she is. It was Chloe. And this time she wasn't smiling. Madison, Kayla, and Lacey were right behind her, arms crossed, their sneakers stomping just a little louder than normal. The sound echoed down the empty corridor. Nyla didn't turn around. She just stood there, back straight, watching the reflection of the girls in the glass of the old trophy case beside her. "So you thought you could just ignore us?" Chloe's voice was sharp. "Thought you could walk around here like you don't owe anyone anything?" Nyla slowly turned. Her expression was unreadable. "I don't owe you," she said quietly. "I don't owe anyone." Madison took a step closer. Big words from someone who's been hiding all week. "I'm not hiding." "Then what do you call it?" Chloe asked. "Sitting alone at lunch, skipping cheer tryouts even though you were on a team back home?" Nyla's eyes narrowed, just slightly. They'd been digging. "You don't know anything about me?" she said. "Oh, but we do." Lacey chimed in, pulling out her phone. "You were in a martial arts tournament last year. 3rd place in state, right?" The girls laughed. "You act like that makes you scary," Chloe said, stepping forward now. "You think just 'cause you can kick a little you're better than everyone?" Nyla didn't answer. She could feel the heat rising in her chest, the tight knot forming right between her shoulders. But she didn't move. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was that martial arts had never been about fighting for her. It was about control. Her grandfather had always told her, "When you're angry, breathe. When they push you, don't push back. Let them show the world who they are. You show them who you are." But in this moment, with Chloe's voice dripping with hate and the others feeding off it like wolves, Nyla could feel that control slipping. "I'm warning you," she said quietly. "Walk away." Chloe scoffed. "Or what? You'll break." "My nose in front of the cameras?" Kayla laughed. "Please, you wouldn't dare." Nyla's fists tightened at her sides, but she didn't raise them. Not yet. Then Chloe leaned in. Too close. Her breath smelled like strawberry gum and cruelty. "You don't belong here," she whispered. "We don't want you here. No one does." And just then, just when Nyla's heart beat loud enough to drown everything else, footsteps echoed. From the far end of the hall, someone was coming. The girls froze, masks slipping back on like nothing had happened. It was Mr. Harris, the janitor, pushing his mop cart slowly around the corner. He paused when he saw them. "Everything all right here?" he asked, eyes scanning the scene. Chloe immediately smiled. "Oh, we were just talking to Nyla, welcoming her properly, you know." Mr. Harris didn't respond right away. He just looked at Nyla, and she looked back. No words. But something passed between them. "I see," he said quietly, then pushed his cart past them. The girls turned and walked away, laughing again, but the sound felt more forced now. Nyla stood there, still as stone. She had the power to end it all, to make them stop. But at what cost? Later that night, she stood in front of the mirror in her room, fists wrapped in cloth from her last practice session. Her trophies were still in boxes in the corner, untouched since the move. She hadn't been back to the dojo in months, not since her grandfather passed away. That was part of why they'd left Atlanta. Too many memories. Too much pain, but now maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to remember who she really was. Miles across town, Jamal sat at the edge of his bed, that folded note still in his hand. He'd read it a dozen times, but the words still felt unreal. "If you're reading this, it means you're the kind of person the world needs more of. My name is Allison Blake. I don't have much time, but I've been searching for someone like you. There's an opportunity, one that could change your life. Follow the address on the back of this note. Trust me." At first, he thought it was some kind of prank, but something about the woman's eyes, the way she handed him that note like it mattered, made him pause. And that address on the back, it wasn't a job listing, wasn't a school or a scholarship office. It was a dojo, one he'd never heard of. Jamal had never studied martial arts, never even thrown a punch in real life. But something about all of this was pulling him in, as if fate was weaving something bigger than he understood. The next day at school, Nyla didn't speak to anyone. But she wasn't hiding either. She walked through the halls with the quiet confidence she'd tried so hard to bury. People noticed, even Chloe noticed, but that only made her angrier. She wasn't used to people standing tall after being knocked down. She wasn't used to someone not needing approval. And that night, Chloe and her friends planned something different, something more serious, something that wasn't just about embarrassment, because now it wasn't just about power, it was about pride. And the fact that Nyla hadn't broken yet, that scared them more than anything. But Chloe had no idea that she was pushing someone who had been trained never to break, only bend, only wait, only strike when absolutely necessary, and when that moment came, there'd be no going back. Not for Chloe, not for anyone, because the girl they thought they could silence was finally ready to be heard. That night, the school's group chat lit up. A blurry picture of Nyla, taken during lunch when she wasn't looking, was suddenly everywhere. Someone had cropped it to make her look angry, added a caption that read, "New girl thinks she's better than everyone. Watch out, she bites." Then came the comments, dozens of them. Laughing emojis, mean jabs, questions about her hair, her clothes, her silence. Some people joined in just to be funny. Others, like Chloe's followers, fueled it with cruel detail. And a few silent watchers didn't comment at all, but they saw everything. Jamal saw it too. He hadn't even talked to Nyla yet, but he recognized that same quiet strength in her that he felt inside himself. Something about how she walked through the school, eyes steady, never asking for attention, never trying to prove anything. He wondered if she had also spent nights awake, wondering where she fit. Jamal had spent most of his life trying to stay visible. His mom worked double shifts at the clinic. His dad was long gone, and he learned early that people expected less from kids who looked like him. So he gave them less, stayed quiet, got decent grades, didn't start trouble. But that note, Allison Blake's note, was still in his pocket every day. Like a key. He hadn't yet used. He finally decided to go. The address led him to a small building tucked between two faded warehouses. There was no big sign outside, just a simple red door. And when he stepped inside, everything changed. The dojo smelled of old wood and leather. The mats were clean. On the wall hung black and white photos of past students. And in the corner stood a tall woman in a crisp uniform, her back straight like a soldier's. She turned when she heard the door. "You must be Jamal," she said, not smiling but not unkind. "I've been expecting you." He blinked. "How?" She nodded toward the folded note in his hand. She had a way of seeing people. Allison didn't believe in accidents. That night, Jamal stayed late. He didn't throw a punch or learn a kick. Instead, the woman, Sensei Mara, had him sweep the floors and watch a few students train. "You don't start by learning how to fight," she said. "You start by learning how to listen, first to others, then to yourself." Jamal didn't realize until later that this dojo wasn't just about martial arts. It was something deeper. Something that reached people who needed to be reminded of their strength. Back at school, Nyla was reaching her limit. The posts didn't stop. Chloe's crew kept finding ways to corner her. In gym class, between periods, at the bus stop. Always. Careful not to get caught. Always subtle enough that teachers saw nothing. Even her mom started noticing she was quieter at dinner. "You okay, baby?" she asked one night. Nyla forced a smile. "Just tired." Her mom didn't press. She knew moving to a new place was hard, but she didn't know the weight Nyla carried. How every word, every stare was a test of her control. Then one morning a strange thing happened. A new poster appeared on the hallway bulletin board. Bright red, handwritten letters. Strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it listens. Sometimes it waits, but it's always watching. No name, no signature, just a message. Nyla saw it before first period. She stared at it for a long time. Later that day, Chloe passed her in the hallway and sneered. "Did you put that up?" Trying to be deep. Nyla didn't answer, but something in her shifted. Meanwhile, Jamal returned to the dojo. Again and again, Sensei Mara started showing him the basics. Breathing, posture, movement. He wasn't a natural, but he was focused. One evening after practice, Mara handed him an old book. Inside were photos of competitions, torn medals, notes, written in quick, sharp handwriting. "Allison Blake was my student," Mara said. "Before she became the woman you met on that plane. She trained here, for years. But her real gift wasn't fighting, it was knowing when not to." Jamal ran, his fingers over the edges of the page. "Why me?" Mara smiled, but there was something heavy in her eyes. "Because you didn't walk past. You gave her your seat. And sometimes the smallest decision tells you everything about a person's spirit." Back in school, a shift was happening. Some students who had watched quietly began to see Chloe's act for what it was. The fake smiles, the controlling ways, the way she turned others into pawns. But Chloe wasn't letting go of her power that easily. She had something planned, an upcoming school assembly. Every year, one student got to give a speech about strength in the face of adversity. Chloe had already told the principal she wanted to speak. She said it was about her struggles with stress and academic pressure. But everyone knew she just wanted the spotlight. That's when Kayla, one of her own friends, did something unexpected. She signed Nyla up to speak too, without asking her. Nyla found out the next day when her name was listed on the announcements. She felt her stomach twist. She didn't want attention. She didn't want war. But maybe this was her moment to speak up. Not for revenge, but to show who she really was. That night, she went to her closet and opened the last box she hadn't touched since they moved. Inside was her black belt, folded neatly. Next to it was a photo of her grandfather, smiling proudly as she stood beside him on the podium. She held the belt for a long time. Across town, Jamal trained harder than ever. He asked Sensei Mara what it meant to stand your ground without violence. She told him, "Sometimes the greatest fight is staying true to who you are." Their paths were separate, but both were building something: courage, focus, resolve. What neither of them knew was that the coming week would test all of it, because Chloe's plan for the assembly wasn't just about words. She was going to turn the stage into a trap, and when the whole school was watching, she tried to humiliate Nyla in a way no one could forget. But she wasn't ready for what Nyla had buried deep for too long. And she had no idea that someone else, someone quiet, someone patient, was also watching, waiting, and ready to step. When the moment called, because sometimes strength doesn't come from fists, it comes from knowing who you are, no matter who tries to tear you down.